bit of a random video, this one. It serves no great purpose other than to give somebody out there a bit of extra information if they're looking to build a bigger picture on what these new Raven Ridge Ryzen 5 CPUs can do. These are the CPUs that have been recently released by AMD with onboard graphics on them, the Vega graphics built into the CPU. Before we get started though, what I really do need to make clear, because I'll get lambasted in the comments if someone thinks that this is what I'm saying, I'm not making any recommendations for people to buy one of these in a commercial setting in the professional space. This does not replace the need for a workstation with a dedicated graphics card. However, what it is for, potentially, if you're this person looking to dip your toes in the water and get used to this kind of software, but you can't justify a high-level workstation at this point, it could be for students looking to build an entry-level system capable of running both games and professional applications at a reasonable level, and maybe even working professionals who are looking to change their career but they can't justify the cost of a Dell Precision workstation, something like that, but they just want to see if this software is for them and they want to build something that'll cope with it. It could be for those guys, but definitely not for anybody in professional space. The vendors of the software will not support CPUs with onboard graphics for this kind of application. They will want a dedicated graphics card. What this video isn't as well, it's not a full system build guide, it's not a full suite of benchmarks by any stretch, and it's also not that recommendation that anyone might be looking for. All it is just simply a look at what this damn thing can do. It is it's amazing what this CPU can do at the price point. So this is the system that I am using right now that you're watching me use. It's the AMD Ryzen 5 2400G running at 3.6 base, 3.9 turbo. That's the stock settings. I've allocated 2 gig of system RAM to act as video RAM for the CPU. You can give it less than that, but with the professional applications it doesn't work very well. There's instability and a massive performance degradation if you allocate less than 2 or 1 gig of video RAM. And I'm also using the AMD Wraith stock cooler that comes with the CPU. The motherboard's an Asus Prime B350M-8 generic micro ATX motherboard. The RAM, I'm using 2 8 gig sticks to make 16 gig of RAM, and mine's running at 2866 megahertz. The storage is an Intel 600p 128 gig NVMe PCI Express solid state drive. It's quite a small capacity solid state drive, but at the moment in a build that costs what this costs, that's probably what you can expect for this price point. The case is Thermaltake Core V21 Micro ATX Cube case, and the power supply is it's Cooler Master that I'm using, 550 watt power supply. If you want to jiggle this build, you could probably knock 30 quid off of the case, maybe a tenner off the motherboard, tenner off the RAM, and get this price. But I mean, look at that. That is less than the cost of a mid to top tier NVIDIA graphics card alone. A 1080 Ti will set you back about £700. Just for the 1080 Ti graphics card. This entire build's coming in at 540. This is phenomenal. This CPU is game changing when you can see what it can do with these professional applications. But yeah, you can knock some money off of these components and either just save yourself a bit of cash or put it towards a larger solid state drive. So you can make compromises somewhere along the lines. When you're going in at this budget, it's a good place to be at when you can do what you can do with this at that price point. The software that I'm going to use in this video, I'm only using one application because this is a proper high-end application. I thought, right, I'm just going to go right in at the deep end with this. I'm using Autodesk VRED. Autodesk VRED is Autodesk's top-tier automotive rendering solution. It's used by BMW, Audi, Volkswagen, Porsche, Skoda, Bentley for their sales shots, catalog shots, car configurators. It's not one of these free open source bits of kit either. This is a 12.5 grand a year license. That's the level we're at here, and that's why I'm so mind blown by these new Raven Ridge CPUs. I did not expect them to be able to cope with software at this level, but it does. And just for proof that we are actually using what we're using, AMD Ryzen 5, just looking at the Windows system information, 16 gig of RAM, and then if we hop on over to Device Manager and look at the display adapters, you can see we're just using the Vega 11 graphics on board the 2400G. So hop on over to Autodesk VRED, and the model that you're looking at on screen right now has been imported and fully textured up using this AMD Raven Ridge Ryzen 5 2400G from start to finish, and I can give you a stone guarantee that from start to finish I have experienced no instability, no issues, no degradation, no crashing, nothing. It has performed like an absolute champ from start to finish. And this model isn't lightweight either. If we just take a look at the interior of the car, you can see we've got all the switch gear in there, we've got all the internals, all the textures are on the dashboard, on the steering wheel. We've got Alcantara there, we've got leather, carbon fiber all over the shop. On the exterior, again, it's fully loaded. We've got brake discs, calipers, tire textures. We've got rear light clusters, front light clusters. We've got, it's fully loaded, and it's just been amazing from start to finish. I was not expecting it to be able to cope with it this well, especially a model of this detail. So yeah, I'm not doing an entire workflow from start to finish on this, obviously. I just wanted to show you that this is something that has been done from start to finish on the Raven Ridge Ryzen 5 2400G. And just to show a couple of things which are CPU intensive, but you would think, oh, you need a high-end CPU for that. Well, not really. So if we select the ground plane and just go to bake lights and shadows, for example, one of the things that I tend to do for rendering on the GPU, and that is something which I do need to make clear at this point, is that what you're looking at now, this is rendered on the GPU. This is not CPU rasterization, this is rendering on the GPU. The CPU rendering doesn't come in until we activate ray tracing, anti-aliasing and ray tracing. This is all rendered on the Vega GPU on board the CPU, and it's pretty buttery smooth. In addition to that, you're actually looking at this window through remote desktop. I'm activating and controlling this Ryzen 5 CPU over remote desktop. So if you're seeing any artifacts in the background, that is because of remote desktop rather than the CPU itself. But yeah, if we're heading over to bake lights and shadows, and we'll just load a preset for ground plane low quality. You do, I mean, let's be realistic, you do have to dial some things back when you're working on a CPU at this level. But the fact that it works at all, and it works well and slick and smooth and stable, is something to commend. So we're going to calculate all, and then it'll see it's going to bake the ground shadows underneath the car, and this makes a hell of a difference. It makes a hell of a difference to the quality of the model when you bake those shadows on. It looks amazing. And then we can head on over and we can enable ambient occlusion rendering, so it's only going to show us the ambient shadows on the scene. And all of these shadows here on the interior of the car, these are ultra high quality ambient shadows which are pre-baked onto this model. That did take a while, it took about half an hour to render those on, but it did it, and it did it well, and it did it with 100% stability. So we can switch this back onto realistic rendering. We can manipulate all the materials and the textures in the scene. All the dialog boxes activate, pop up without issue. There's no UI element issues, there's no scaling issues. You wouldn't know the difference. If I didn't tell you this was the AMD Ryzen 5 Raven Ridge CPU, you wouldn't have noticed the difference. It's absolutely amazing. So we can head on over to the material properties. Let's change this from a dark blue to potentially my next car, which is possibly going to be a purple silk BMW M4. So yeah, I know. I haven't signed on the dotted line yet, but it's sort of roughly that kind of color. It's maybe not that purple. It is a slightly darker. That's quite accurate. That actually, that is quite accurate. Right, the clear coat. How reflective is this? Let's put a bit more on it. Don't want it to be quite chromed, but a bit of reflections would be nice. There we go. In terms of selections and component meshing, you can see wherever you select a part in VRED or VRED, it'll mesh the selection that you've picked. If we head on over to the top level of the model and just pick the entire car, I mean, look at that. It's meshed it fine. Now we are getting a little bit jittery. The CPU is starting to struggle a little bit when we've got, I don't know how many components, but quite a few all meshed. So it's starting to grind to a halt a little bit here, but we turn off bounding boxes. Is that going to make it any quicker? No, it is. It's starting to struggle with the mesh. But to be honest, you very rarely do that. And if you are starting to struggle, you can just disable wireframe, enable bounding, and then you've now got the entire car selected, and you can start manipulating it using transforms and whatnot. So look at that. Just look at that. The fact that we can do this on a 130 quid CPU is amazing. It's game changing. AMD. I've bashed 7 shades of shit out of Ryzen over the last year, but this is a game changer. It really is. So right, let's just do a very quick render. I think I'm happy with most of this except this carbon fiber, which I did leave a slight orange pattern on it, which I don't like. Let's put that back to a more realistic carbon fiber pattern, something like that. That'll do. There we go. Right, we've got the dirt textures along the bottom as well. That looks fine. Let's enable the backplate, and we'll drop this onto this backplate here, which I'll have to link credit for the backplate in the video description because I did steal this off someone's generic website. But yeah, there you go. There's the ground shadows all looking crispy. Model's looking pretty good. Let's go into the camera settings and see how we're doing with the camera. Right, we're using perspective, field of view 45 degrees, image processing. Let's change this over to filmic, and exposure. Let's drop that down slightly. Maybe not that much. Crank on a little bit more exposure, match it to the backplate. And yeah, I think I'm happy with that. Have we got glow? That's disabled. Cool. Going back over to the materials, right, I need to go to the environment just to make sure there's not too much exposure on the environment. So we're using that environment there. Exposure is at 1, good. And then we can enable anti-aliasing, which is going to smooth off all the edges. Just checking the anti-aliasing that I've got enabled, we have 256 samples of Lanczos. Let's change that over to Mitchell Netrivali. And for the ray tracing itself, I have dialed the settings back quite a bit. So this isn't what I would normally run on my main rig, which is an 8700K with a 1080 Ti. I've dialed it back quite significantly. So we're not using photon tracing. We don't have many samples and presets cranked all the way up. We're actually at pretty minimum settings here. We've got sort of quality of 1 on the interactive reflections and trace depths and whatnot. So it's going to work. It's going to give us a pretty good image. It's just not going to be the best, but it's more than I expected it would ever do on a 130 quid CPU. And there you go. Look at that. I am honestly still a novice with this application, so I'm not au fait with all the settings and getting the best quality render. Like, I'm not happy personally with the wheels. I think they look a little bit too cartoony. The paint, I could probably do with tinkering with that. The carbon fiber is not standing out enough. So there's a lot about this which I'm not personally happy with, and I know I could improve. But the good thing about this is the system that I'm using right now is not the bottleneck. I am the bottleneck when it comes to making this image currently. And given that the settings are still pretty decent, that ray tracing dial is climbing pretty quickly. That's 21 passes, 22 passes, and that's going to go all the way up to 100. When it gets to 100, that's your absolute maximum quality. And it's good. Probably, I would suspect it'll take around 3 or 4 minutes to get there if I was to wait for it. But there you go. That's the AMD Raven Ridge Ryzen 5 GPU running at stock settings. You can overclock it if you want to. Yeah, I am amazed. I am amazed. If you're looking to get one of these and you want to do a little bit of part-time amateur work with it on professional applications, it works, and it works very, very well. I've tested it with Autodesk Inventor. I've tested it with Fusion 360 as well. It's not brilliant, but it works. No issues whatsoever. Okay, guys, thank you very much. That'll do it for this one. If you like this one, do hit the thumbs up. If you want to see me do anything else with the AMD Ryzen 5 Raven Ridge CPUs, do let me know in the comments. I've got a few things planned for it, but this one is just the start. So I'll see you in the next one. Thank you very much. Toodles.